Now what if the problem is way, way, way back from the beginning? So we're going to pick up on this cable here and say that we wish that it had been crossed a different way. Do we really want to ladder back 40 or 50 rows? And you may even have finished the knitting, so this can be done whilst the knitting is on the needles, or it can be done after the event. So we're going to take a piece of contrasting coloured waste yarn, similar weight, brightly contrasting, and this is the problem cable. So I'm just going to graft this. So I'm going to attach it to the knitting just above the cable row, and I'm going to find a row that's nice and easy to follow. So I'm going to sew, I'm going to go one row higher. I'm going to sew around the base of this stitch, back into stitch number 1 and purlwise into 2. Round the base of this stitch, back in there and purlwise into the next stitch, and I'm just going to keep doing that until I've sewn it right across the cable. We've got a 6-stitch flap sewn on to the 6 stitches of the cable just a little way above the cable cross. So now what we can do is we can make an incision in the row below. So this is the row below, and I'm cutting in the middle because that will give me a tail of yarn to darn in. So I'm going to ladder back that row underneath, till I get to the purl. Make sure I release that edge stitch, and now I have a regular cable fix to take care of here. I can, I'm right on the cable row, so I can undo that cable row. I can undo half if I want. I can undo the whole thing. In fact, I'm going to turn this into a 4/2 cable now. I've picked up my stitches in sequence, and the easiest thing to do is to force them into their new order. So I've got 4 stitches crossing to the right over the top of 2, and I've got 1 row of yarn that I've unpicked. So now I'm going to re-knit that very carefully. When you're fixing your cables, make sure you fix them correctly and don't just redo the same error that you had in the first place. Very easy to do. And I'm just working right at my needle tips here to allow me to get all the necessary stitches, and then I'm going to share out the slack. There are the stitches, and I've shared out the slack. Now I'm going to rebuild the missing row because we cut a row. So I'm going to tuck my waste yarn through to the back, and now I'm going to sew these 6 stitches to those 6 stitches, and then we can remove the waste yarn. So I've taken a fresh piece of sewing yarn, in purlwise to the first stitch, copy that first orange stitch, go around the base, back in the stitch that we've just started sewing from front to back, and purlwise into the next one, just as we did with the orange waste yarn flap. Choose a nice strong colour contrast so you can see what you're doing. This is a little scary the first time, so do a swatch. Practice it on a, make a mistake on a swatch deliberately, and practice it on a swatch. And we'll keep on going till we get to the other side. As you sew, try and make sure the newly sewn stitches are the same shape as all their other friends in the knitting. Adjust them to look good. Then take both yarn tails through at the end of the work. You've got the yarn tail where we cut it and one from the sewing at both sides. My yarn tails are through on the back now, and now I can remove my waste yarn, and I'm going to have to pick that out stitch by stitch. There are all kinds of other fixes you can apply this same technique to. Once the waste yarn is gone, check the front one more time, make any final adjustments, and then neaten the yarn tails. You're going to have two tails at each side, the grafting yarn and the original knitted yarn. I like to link them around one another, and then I could gently duplicate stitch or darn this one in this direction, and this one I would darn in at the back behind this cable, which will hide it. I like my yarn tails to link and go in opposing directions. I'd do that at both sides of the cable, and then we're all done. This kind of fix can be made whilst you're knitting or years later if necessary, and this style of fix can be used in many situations. Fear no cables.